You're listening to Cool and Unusual Punishment Presents Chosen. This is episode 13. My name is Tyler, and joining me on the couch, Jody, how are you?
I'm great. And how?
Jody, it's good to see you again in the studio.
It's great to be here. You know, it's been a busy summer. I've been here, there, and everywhere. I mean, it brings me back to this time when I was on Wisconsin Public Radio doing a promo for something over the summer, and the guy, after I finished, looked at me and said, "Who are you exactly?" Is that how you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about?
We are talking timelines. Do you like them? I do.
I love them. I love them in a line, stretched out.
I love them with red string.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love if you look at one side, you see the start, and then all the way at the other, you see the end. It's a great timeline.
Yep. That's what we're talking about tonight. At the start, let's remind everybody that this podcast is about a church in Eau Claire, Wisconsin called Valleybrook. This is about that church during a particular period of time, 2014, 2015, 2016, and of course the years preceding that when some things were building up. It is no commentary on the church as it stands presently. This episode is about timelines. A particular timeline for Matt and Jesse Irwin. If you remember, Matt Irwin provided us with the information about the X-Men.
Yeah.
So he and his wife gave me this timeline, and it's sort of the aftermath timeline. So these are things that they experienced starting in February 2015. And well, I guess even January. They kept these sorts of notes about all of these experiences. And there's a little paragraph above the timeline that I think will help everybody understand what we're talking about. I created this timeline because when we shared on Facebook the anonymous blog post written by us about how Valleybrook's approach failed us, we received a ton of criticism from Valleybrook members and pastors, as well as pastors and leaders from other churches. Actually, no one contacted us. They said this about us to people around us, while criticizing us for not going to people directly. A few things were said to us during meeting. Some of this included, quote, "Why did you go public? You should have sat and talked this through," end quote. "You left. You don't get a say anymore. This is so hateful. They want to burn Valleybrook down so you feel better about leaving. I was hurt by this." That was said to them by the interim pastor. "They won't be satisfied until Valleybrook shuts down and leave us alone." At this point, we were still trying to stay, quote, "beyond reproach," according to evangelical culture, and we're really trying to be above board with everything. That is why I recorded every effort we had made to work with the church and its leaders to show that these accusations were not true and that we had actually tried very hard before going public. P.S. redacted, it's somebody involved in the church, said he didn't even read the entire post we wrote. Matt and I also check ourselves to make sure we're not, quote, off, something we assumed other people did, but now realize most people don't. So we were also making sure we were acting in line with our ethics and what we were saying was true. So at some point when this is all happening, Matt and Jesse made it clear publicly that, like, you know, there was a lot of stuff on that Tales from a Cult website, and a lot of these things were done anonymously for a period of time, and they decided that they didn't want to do that anymore, and they took a lot of flack for that. So let's start with January 2015, shall we? And when I say things like we, it's Matt and Jesse.
Okay.
It's in here a lot. So January 2015, we meet with Doug and Nate about the chosen paper. We are told we brought demons, that Satan is speaking through our deepest wounds, and we were yelled at, yet reassured that they love us so much. February 2015. Matt resigns from the X-Men in an email to the group and Doug and Nate. He is the only member of that group who acknowledges anything unhealthy in the church. The others want to stay on and, quote, lead in this difficult time. One of those members says, more people just have to leave Valleybrook, ... So I better clarify also, there's two columns, the thing that happened, like the action and like the reaction to it. So that's why I'm reading things like this. February 2015, we write to the overseers a lot. For Doug to be fired, for him not to be allowed to address the congregation one last time, for Mary to have limited counseling duties, for Mary not to teach at the women's conference. So this is right before. This is post-chosen, right as stuff is really bubbling. Redacted did reach out to us after the initial contact. That's one of the overseers. He was in contact about the resistance of other overseers to the use of the word abuse. Few responses after that. February 2015. Matt talks to Redacted, who is the person involved with the church that we've touched on before as somebody who was involved in the curriculum writing for Wounded. Matt talks to Redacted in the lobby about suspending Wounded because it is not wise to continue that ministry if there was spiritual abuse and without strong pastoral support. Jesse joins the conversation and says the same. Redacted told Matt that if he could just talk to Doug, he could, quote, help him work through his problems, end quote. Redacted said he absolutely stands by the curriculum because, quote, I wrote it, end quote. It will be fine as long as the group leaders follow the curriculum and he will support them. Redacted later wrote a letter to the overseers explaining that we opposed Wounded, but it was only because we were in Doug and Nate's group and they went rogue. So we didn't have a good picture of the ministry. I had been in his wife's group the year before and received and witnessed abuse by her, to the extent that I had emailed a member prior to all of this to apologize for watching her get bullied and not saying anything.
How strange that, like, there's different layers of ass covering.
Oh.
Like, the guy who wrote Wounded is happy to throw Doug and Nate under the bus, but let's not.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep, like, look, Wounded at its core. Now, that's good. Let's not.
I mean, that's good because I wrote that.
Right. Abuse. Whoa, with that language. Let's not use words like that.
A footnote about the author of that. This person was the leader of Wounded, who went to an unaccredited Bible college. He had been a pastor at a different church in the past. He was knit with an 18-year-old woman, although he was in his 40s and married with a child, which we have touched on before with some of the Facebook posts. February 2015. I just have to say that I can't help but really admire note-taking like this. It is absolutely tremendous.
I guess we'll probably post that, right?
Yes. Yeah,
looking at it, first of all, it's dense. You can see it's columnized. When you held it up, I was like, that's double column. That's a serious note-taking operation.
Yes. All right, February 2015. A lot happens this month. Jesse tells Mary Clark in the sanctuary after the service that we believe spiritual abuse and false teaching did occur at Valleybrook, and we wouldn't be able to trust her unless we knew she was not being a conduit of Doug influencing the church. Matt joins this conversation and agrees. Mary said she did agree there was some false teachings. She said she is still friends with Doug, loves him so much, but they don't even talk about Valleybrook. They had dinner the other night, and it was, quote, so refreshing to talk about other stuff, end quote. February 2015. Jesse emails Redacted to say that not everyone is getting the overseer emails who would like to, people in our small group, and asked if there was a way to expand the list. Redacted is the secretary. Redacted accidentally replies to Jessie with an email meant for one of the overseers with a snarky comment about her.
Oh.
The biggest nightmare.
Get a load of this hag. Am I right?
Whoops.
Ooh, so sorry.
Google, how do I... March 2015. Some people expressed to Converge that they don't feel it's appropriate to hold the CIT interviews at Valleybrook. If you remember, this is when...
Sure.
Back at the start, the site of possible abuse, which is an excellent point.
Yes.
Oh, my God. Jessie emailed Dr. Perry, who's leading this effort from Converge, to say that we didn't wish to be seen by Redacted since we have children in their ministry. These are people they didn't want to be seen as people coming in to give an interview. They have kids still in the ministry there. Like, things are very much up in the air at this point, but they haven't left the church officially. They have kids that are like in programs that some of the people at that church, like the kids are still maybe involved with at that point. Yeah. And they don't want to be seen by these people as like coming whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Dr. Perry called Jessie to say that he understood and apologized, but said they couldn't change the meeting space at this late of a time. He said they would ask staff to stay in their offices those days. He would keep it in mind for any future situations like this. Until I read that, I had not thought to myself, if you are the victim of something and you are going to report on that, why would they have you do it in the place?
Walk past all the offices to the
interview
my room.
Mind.
Yeah, hey, real quick, can everyone just stay? Just don't look. Don't everyone
go in the
keep
bathrooms.
Your eyes closed. We're gonna have compromising people walking down this hallway.
All
everyone,
day.
Just keep your eyes shut.
Yep.
All day.
And of course, I'm sure that's what they all did. Nobody was just.
Yeah.
March 2015, Matt and Jessie participate in the CIT interviews. 30 minutes is not very long when you've been in a cult. That's all you get is 30 minutes. March 2015, Matt and Jessie made an appointment with the overseers when they were available. Don't really remember this. Redacted had read the report by that time and knew what was in it. They offered a general apology. March 2015. We are unfriended on Facebook by Mary Clark, so we know she has resigned. 10 months later, when we would see her in public and not greet her, respecting the boundary she set up by disconnecting from us, she wrote an entire blog post about how much we, unnamed in it, hated her and how she would take the high road and choose love. Valleybrook worship leader praised her in the comments. And here's that blog post.
Oh my God. I was... Beat me to it. I would love to hear that blog post.
We have that.
All right.
Okay. Love is greater than fear. February 13th, 2016, it's written. They ran into her the year previous.
Mary Clark resigns, unfriends them. Sometime later, they bump into him at the grocery store. There's no acknowledgement. She goes to the blog. Okay.
Awkward encounter. I'm sitting in a local coffee shop, headphones in, Bible open on the table. I'm in my own little world with only a vague remembrance that I am, in fact, in a public place. Side note. It is the state of vague remembrance that continually puts me in awkward positions where I start singing or humming along to the music in my headphones, forgetful of the people around me that are not wearing headphones. Anyway, today, sitting in a coffee shop, absorbed in what I'm doing, I glanced up from my own little world, just in time to see the face of the man walking past my table. Our eyes meet, but he quickly looks away. No acknowledgement of me. His wife had walked by already. I recognize him, and so my face lights up, and I smile, starting to say hello, but he has already looked away. And then I remember, they don't talk to me anymore. They don't acknowledge me. This kind of scenario has happened to me before. It used to make me cry, breaking and re-breaking my heart. Today, it made me smile and chuckle to myself. Odd, right? My thought that prompted the smile? Oh, that's right. You hate me now. Why did it make me smile? Because I forgot. I forgot that people hate me now. Hate, maybe, strongly dislike, have contempt for, whichever.
God, just yeah, this is some like high school, like just get on with it.
My So-Called Life by Claire Danes.
Swear to God.
I forgot for a tiny sliver of a minute because I saw someone that I know that I've cared about, and when I see people, I smile at them. But they did not smile back. They avoided, ignored. Let's not forget, she removed them from Facebook.
There might be context we're missing, some interactions. I'm guessing not, based on the density of the papers you're holding. But yeah, it feels like they went to her when she was at the church, and she was like, look, hey, we're cool. Love Doug. And then she resigns, unfriends them.
They see her at a coffee shop and don't
that's right. You hate
her.
me. I don't know. Maybe I forgot what the tone of what blogs was like. It's like too personal.
Yeah.
I would say that's what you can expect from a blog. Oh, that's right. You hate me.
And I know why. You see, I know what they believe about me. I know what they've been told, and I know what they've told other people. When confronted with this reality, I usually go to the place in my heart and mind that wants to scream truth from the rafters, find the tallest building in town and yell into a megaphone to take out a full-page ad in the local paper. But lately that hasn't been the case. I've been living in Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. Let me be clear about one thing. I've had my share of things I've messed up. I'm not saying for a second that I haven't, but I've also heard so many things about myself in the last 12 months that just didn't happen. Things I never said, things I never did. Here's the other thing. I've done my fair share of avoiding people this year, and I've felt justified in it, and probably still would if not for the pesky scriptures. No joke. This is what I was reading in my Bible only moments before the awkward encounter.
And if a married couple walks past the...
Lift your eyes with a smile.
God. Put it in your blog, saith the Lord.
Heed not their reaction, but note it for later when you shall write 1,200 words.
What's the verse? What was she reading the moment before she looked up?
1 John 4, 7 through 12, 17 through 19. There was a few verses skipped.
She was skipping around, yeah. She had some highlighted.
Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent us his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an I thought it was astonishing. My God. Well,
oh, you're talking about the astonishing Jesus Christ?
I mean, I guess you get blog posts like this when you get Bible verses like this. It's like, couldn't we just have made this about 2 sentences here? As an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. It goes on a bit more, but you get the idea. I was reminding myself that the command to love doesn't come with exceptions. It doesn't get to be put up on the shelf because I'm uncomfortable or afraid or feel justified in my actions or attitudes. I believe that God desires for us to live real. And in reality, I don't want to sit down with some people and be fake and talk about kids and the weather. And I don't want to rehash the past and try to figure out who's right and what's wrong and to what degree, etc., etc. I do, however, think I can smile and say hi to the people of God brings across my path. I don't need to be right and I don't need to be safe. I really just want to be, to live as God intended, to love and be loved. Sometimes love gives space. Sometimes we need to love from a distance. Love doesn't mean letting someone do whatever they want to you, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. I guess this is my point. We need to figure out how to love one another. We need to figure out how to love people we disagree with, people who are frustrating to us, people who hurt us. And it goes on with some more verses, and this will be shared in the notes. Today I have a new commitment to loving, and I'm realizing that in order to seriously commit to that kind of loving how Jesus loved me, I need to figure out some stuff and lay some stuff down. I know this. I want to smile at people. I want to acknowledge them. I think that's literally the least we can do. We have some repenting to do, present company included. Okay, back to the timeline. March 2015, we attended the reading of the CIT report. Afterward, we contacted Nate's mom to extend support. Jesse had spoken with Redacted, and both women thought Nate's mom should be given some sort of opportunity to address the church if she wished. Redacted is now an overseer and has not been in contact with Nate's mom. April 2015, we attended the Q&A in which everyone got to write down one question, and when the time was up, the questions were done. The info from the meeting was only available to those who attended. At this meeting, nothing negative was said about the unrepentant abusers, but Redacted mentioned Grant negatively, that he hurt people and wrote things that weren't true. April 2015. Interesting, Grant's the one.
Yeah, it's these snitches that are really, aren't they the problem?
April 2015. We meet with Redacted to ask him to clarify his statements about Grant. I just really admire this sort of, there is like a refusal to let it go.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't let it go. He thought Mary should have been allowed to stay. This is the person they met with. He explained what he thought was untrue about Grant's story, which were minor examples, such as the number of people present at a staff meeting. When we asked about some suspect activity we had learned about in youth group, he said, "I know the other side of that story." And we clarified with him he got this information from Doug. Redacted told us he doesn't need this job because his wife works and his house was paid for. He said he and Redacted were just really good friends. Although there is biblical support for knitting, we left the meeting thinking he doesn't get it. April 2015. We met with Redacted and Redacted to discuss their perspective and try to decide if we feel comfortable bringing our kids back to Valleybrook Kids' ministry. We never did. We left the meeting feeling comfortable. We found out that that group did not receive funds that were supposedly allocated to children's ministry, but all the same, they never brought their kids back. May 2015. Jesse emailed Redacted to ask if, for now, instead of pursuing the continuance of wounded, we should all seek to reach out and care for those who have been hurt at Valleybrook. She mentioned speaking with Redacted. In a very brief email, Redacted assured Jesse that all of the leaders were going to be retrained, possibly at the Allender Center. He did not ask about Redacted, did not ask if she knew of anyone specifically we could reach out to, did not ask for nor offer any ideas to assist the abused people. So by this time, they've all heard the report, right? And there's all these suggestions about things they're supposed to be doing. It's like this report can say, these are the things that happened. This is spiritual abuse. And then this is what happens after the fact, is everybody who's still there, who's either in power temporarily or who was like there before that's now trying to get some power. Everybody's just like wanting this to go away.
There's a very big elephant, if you will.
Yeah.
At the center of a lot of this, where it's like, well, a lot of people will tell you things, some mistakes were made. This and that. We'll do some retraining. Look, I saw that in the reports. We'll do some retraining. Everyone's kind of talking around the abuse, the word abuse, and the people that were abused. It's kind of focused on the operational, administrative,
how do we just
measures.
Keep going?
Yeah, and everyone seems very blind to the real abuse that happened at the center of this. That seems to just be absent from a lot of these.
Yeah. I mean, that's why she's asking about Wounded, because it's just a few months ago that this report comes out in which there is like an entire section about that particular thing. And this is, the kind of circles people keep talking around everybody. May 2015, after learning of the estrangements in the Redacted family, Jesse emails Redacted because Jesse had been in this person's, who was estranged, Wounded group with a Redacted daughter and saw firsthand the attempt to separate her from her parents. Jesse asked if Redacted would consider reaching out to that young woman. So essentially, there was somebody who was split from their parents that was in her group. There's some thought that maybe now in the aftermath of all of this, there can be some mending.
It's a admirable effort to go back to those people and try and in the wake of Wounded to say, like, to try and repair what was done in Wounded single-handedly is a brave thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Redacted told Jesse she felt, quote, attacked by that request. She set up a meeting for over 2 weeks from that point, assigned to Jesse that she didn't find it to be an urgent matter. May 2015, Jesse meets Redacted for coffee to discuss this, right? Redacted spoke for leadership, said Doug wasn't a false prophet, said the thought was an extreme on one end of the continuum. She, quote, stood by her counsel that Redacted needed to move out of her parents' house, end quote. She said she was trying to help Redacted with her difficult family situation. Jesse asked if Redacted was basing all of her information from what Doug told her. Redacted realized that yes, she hadn't witnessed any problems for herself with this young woman and her family, but Doug had briefed the leaders on all the people in the group. Redacted said she would pray about contacting somebody and did apologize to Jesse for the abusive way she treated her. May 2015. Matt spoke with Redacted to hear his stance since he was handling all of the money. Redacted's fiance had defended Doug on Facebook recently. When asked if Doug was involved in his wedding or attending the ceremony or reception, Redacted said no. They're engaged, they're going to be married. This is going to come up a bit. People still involved with the church. There's going to be this wedding, and there's going to be a lot of people that really should not be at this wedding, that are at this wedding, and it causes a lot of problems. He did not share that Mary was officiating. He did not say they were having a reception in Tulsa that Doug would attend.
We just decided Tulsa, maybe that's the place to go.
We felt comfortable enough with his answers that we made a decent financial donation at that time. But of course, they didn't know these things at this time, right? So I think there's like a desperate hope that there's going to be something done at this point. May 2015. We expressed the opinion that Valleybrook shouldn't even be touching Wounded right now. This was notes from somebody who was helping lead the church right in the aftermath of all of this stuff. Redacted asked if it would make us feel better that it wouldn't roll out until fall 2016 at the earliest, it being Wounded. He was mentoring Redacted and, quote, he knew his heart. Another comment, Wounded was terminated completely by July 2015. We expressed concern about Redacted's knit relationship with the young woman. Redacted suggested that Matt befriend Redacted, who was in the knit relationship, and then he could talk to him about that. Redacted continued in his knit relationship. Right? Redacted continued in his knit relationship with a 19-year-old woman as he preached at Valleybrook. We do not know the status of that relationship at this time. We said we had concerns about Redacted's fiance not acknowledging the abuse. The guy they're meeting with said he really thought that Redacted was coming around. In July, Redacted publicly said that she didn't believe abuse happened at Valleybrook. We shared that we didn't think Redacted understood the extent of the abuse either. And the person they're meeting with told us that the staff would be undergoing counseling. He thought Redacted was teachable and open to the culture that he was trying to create. We believe their counseling was limited and not proportionate. Several months later, Redacted was in a restoration process said to be by his own choice. We said Doug was a false teacher and we thought his teaching should be examined so they could be explicitly untaught. Redacted told us that Doug was not a false teacher, that his exegesis was correct, but his application was wrong. Redacted later acknowledged there was false teachings at Valleybrook, different than Doug being a false, evil teacher, however. By September, Redacted acknowledged that Doug was a false teacher in a private conversation with Matt. June 2015, Matt and Jesse attend the meeting to vote in the transitional leadership team. In June 2015, they send their first letter to that new team. We got feedback later from one of the members saying everything we said in the letter ended up being true. However, in general, we received no response. June 2015, we sent our second letter to the transitional leadership team. The main ideas that we asked for were: acknowledge the reality of what happened in our church, learn about spiritual abuse, humble servant leaders, no more division of families or inappropriate knit relationships, extreme caution for fellowship with unrepentant leaders in regards to leaders. Build a foundation on Christ alone, not on Valleybrook's former identity. We received no response. It was said that current leaders would not be asked to cut off their relationships with Doug or Mary because the severing of relationships is what the abusive system did.
Boy, that is some... oh, man.
That is some gaslighting.
It's just like, it just reeks of, like, disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you weren't supposed to do that.
We tried to explain that the old system encouraged separation for no good reason, but sometimes it is appropriate, as it would be here. So you can see the issue with, like, a wedding with current people
Right.
at the church in positions of power, having people who resigned officiating your wedding.
Oh, I don't work here. I'm just here for this wedding. I just happen to be in this church for this
It
wedding.
was so refreshing to talk about other stuff. June 2015. We have been silent on Facebook while other people sparred out, including people associated with Valleybrook leadership, such as Redacted, the youth group leader, and Redacted, Valleybrook-funded missionary in Ukraine. Matt posts a meme about transparency with no comment. It says, transparency, I don't think it means what you think it means. The Redacted sent Matt an email telling him that, quote, public humiliation is hurtful.
Put it in your blog.
And that the transitional leadership team constantly discusses how to be transparent in a way that is helpful, claiming, quote, public humiliation, end quote, when there was no associated comment, is another attempt to silence someone who may be challenging leadership. Matt removed the post out of good faith. June 2015. On Father's Day, Redacted leads worship, and Redacted preaches about adoption and how that gave the adopted rights to the everything the Father has. Right off the heels of our former lead pastor adopting our former co-lead pastor, and with no acknowledgement or apologies for Mary Clark's role in Redacted's wedding. We realized that even though we had tried Over the past 2 months, we had no reason to think that anything would change and we would be able to trust these leaders. It ended up being our last service at Valleybrook. June 2015. Jesse and Matt reach out to Redacted's mom. This is her mom.
Okay.
The young woman.
Okay.
Yep. Realizing that we may be watching a Nate Hagedorn situation. Jesse spoke with Redacted's mom for a few hours. First, to try to screen for any actual abuses in the family that might warrant a separation. This was an informal conversation, but Jesse has an MSW, which is a Master's of Social Work.
I mean, given the situation, like to still be considerate enough to go into that conversation, like, well, I should see if I should try and discern if there was abuse.
Yeah.
More charitable than I may have been in that situation.
Yeah. And while they had normal family problems, nothing seemed unsafe for Redacted, which is the young woman. Second, to listen to the mom's story, it was like so many other families being told, you don't see me, you don't understand me, you don't love me like Valleybrook does, along with the general pulling away of relationship, time, affection. June 2015. Redacted and Jesse share their concerns about this young woman's family with somebody else. Redacted emailed Redacted. At that point, she learned her father was dying, so her attention went there. She was also uncertain about going to Valleybrook. This was the mom. So, like, the mom had thought about maybe, pursuing this.
Yeah.
July 2015, a public meeting was held. We did not attend because at that point we had to part ways with Valleybrook due to our lack of faith and leadership. The results of that meeting were reported to us by other people. Redacted publicly admitted she didn't believe abuse happened. Another Redacted acknowledged that he had known about Mary's participation in the wedding. He apparently apologized there, but we didn't hear it. We mentioned this because the transitional leadership team would address things only in meetings, nowhere else, and consider that public. We were heartened that the members present reacted. Once again, we had hoped we could return to Valleybrook at some point. July 2015. We received Redacted's churchwide apology letter regarding Wounded, which we did read in a previous episode, in which he said he did nothing wrong, but referenced his calling to leadership several times. We found this non-apology to be more hurtful than helpful, and it seemed like posturing. July 2015. Redacted resigned as youth pastor of Valleybrook for the benefit of his marriage. We have strong suspicions that this wasn't the only reason Redacted resigned, and quite honestly, that shouldn't have been. July 2015. Matt attends a Q&A session about Wounded. We are still hoping to return to Valleybrook at this time. His plan is to listen. When no one asks any difficult questions in the meeting, and Redacted asks, does anyone have any questions about the timeline of things? Matt spoke. He points out that the curriculum that Redacted stands by isn't very Jesus-centric. Matt questioned the health of Redacted to be a leader. Redacted said, Matt, you were a leader too. Matt never had a leadership position at Valleybrook, nor was he seeking one. Redacted tells Matt he was, quote, trained not to trust him. This man had been preaching on Sunday mornings at a church of which we were members and that we were trying to keep as our church home. Several people approached Matt afterward and say thank you for saying that, because at this point many people are still afraid to speak up to leaders. Redacted's comment to Matt was an example of turning things around on the person with concerns. August 2015. Young woman's grandmother pushes back at Redacted on his Facebook post about bringing his, quote, daughter to college. Young woman's grandmother writes, she's not yours. Matt liked the comment, didn't write anything in addition. Redacted unfriended both Matt and Jesse and blocked both of us on Facebook. Continues in leadership at Valleybrook.
God bless them for documenting the social media drama.
August 2015. We send our final letter to the TLT with pleas to make the leadership and the church safe enough so that we could stay. We said we wanted to stay. No response. August 2015. We sent 16 ideas for healing to the TLT that we offered to help with, including our offer to buy subtle power of spiritual abuse for the entire congregation. No response. It is really disheartening to see that there was this really robust, specific report about all of the things that happened. And then there's bullet points, suggestions of how a church can move forward in the aftermath of something like this, and that all of it is completely ignored.
Yeah, it does feel like everyone who could have made any changes just sort of shouldered past it and kept going, and these emails that don't get responded to, and a lot of...
Yeah, there is no pause button. To have two people who were at your church for a significant period of time through all of the most problematic times offer to buy a book for an entire congregation. Boy. September 2015, after a few months at a different church, as a refugee, we begin to officially search for a new church home. These months were truly painful, and although we were happy in our current church, the first several months were spent simply being okay in a church setting. September 2015, we attend Grant Schultz's Confession and Repentance, which was a thing that happened. It was very healing for him to acknowledge in that place what had happened. It was the only time we had heard that done at Valleybrook.
He did that at Valleybrook? Like months later, he came back and did... Wow.
October 2015, Redacted, who was a member of the Constitution team, meaning a team of people that were going to redo the Constitution for the church, approached Matt with 3 points. Number 1, Redacted did not need to enter any sort of restoration process, which he later did. Number 2, the rest of us get to ride off in the sunset and be happy about going to church, but we expect them to hang their heads when they come in every Sunday. Number 3, corporate entities don't apologize, and Valleybrook shouldn't have to.
Yikes. Yikes. That is, someone's been sitting on some bitter feelings for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, you get to think about God and not feel like shit about yourself? Ooh.
We attend the financial report. We are so grieved because we donated a ridiculous amount of money to Valleybrook and realized we had been lied to and swindled. We donate to other causes such as Wells in Africa, anti-human trafficking, Apple Pregnancy Center, etc. To think of what our donations could have done in those other places instead is absolutely sickening. We are left with the impression that Valleybrook is willing to consider legal action. December 2015. We thought they said at the financial meeting that people could see the financial documents. We requested to do so, but told we were mistaken and that offer had not been made.
You must be mistaken, people who keep meticulously, insanely meticulous notes. No, you misheard.
December 2015, the article appears in the Leader Telegram saying Valleybrook is all better now and they are not going to pursue legal action. Jesse emails the transitional leadership team to confirm that this is true and asks for the rationale. No response. December 2015. 11 days after her initial email, Jesse went and sent another one asking, is this an intended email address? 2 days later, Redacted sent a response saying that, quote, Scripture provides significant guidance and that they are not going to press charges or sue Doug or Mary. January 2016, the day after the congregation voted on the Constitution, the TLT sends a letter explaining the reason for not bringing legal suit. Says 1 Corinthians 6 is a directive, and this is what God says. This includes an apology that was made in the Leader Telegram. Doug had taken an issue of scripture that is gray to most Christians, predestination of salvation, and said that his interpretation, that was the only true and correct interpretation. That is what Redacted's letter said about 1 Corinthians 6. It also failed to address the difference between civil suits between parties and criminal investigations by the state. This is of huge importance to protect the abused of any kind in the church, gathered by our extensive reading and research. January 2016. We had friends who were in contact with Mary Clark, and they said she claimed she had reached out to the TLT over and over again and got no response. This was concerning to us, so I reached out to them to ask. Redacted made sure to ask all members of the TLT about their communication with Mary Clark. They gave me detailed information, including dates and forms of communication. I appreciated the effort and felt satisfied that they were trustworthy regarding the matter. February 2016, an article was posted on Tales from the Cult addressing the problematic approach in this letter. We were authors but chose to remain anonymous to protect our children. This is that, thing that was on Tales of the Cult where there was nobody identified. The family of our first grader's best friend attended Redacted. His principal had attended Valleybrook, and we weren't sure where he was at. His teacher for the next year was to be Redacted, who was the wife of Valleybrook's attorney and currently is. We received messages from both our friend and pastor asking, "Did you guys write that article?" Because both had been contacted. Our friend had been yelled at, saying we were bitter, unforgiving. It wasn't fair to us to be anonymous, which shows a lack of understanding of individuals versus institutions, as well as Valleybrook's sordid past of destroying anyone who opposed leadership, those people still being in the community at Redacted. There's another church that got started. It was called Ethos. That's the Redacted church. I don't really go into it, but there's certain people that started this church that Mary Clark kind of was stirring the creator of,
Sure.
Called Ethos, and some of the people went to this,
I mean, first of all, how scary just to
Yeah.
I mean, these are people in your world of faith, like in your church community, that they you have to wonder about who you can trust, and yes, her point is well made that an institution that has spent a year sort of being very wiggly and dodgy on accountability, being like, how dare you post that anonymously?
Right?
Come on.
Yeah. One said, we, quote, just want Valleybrook to fail so they feel better about leaving, end quote. No one contacted us. February 2016, we begin our efforts to see if there was other ways to pursue justice. For the reasons we have already stated, we tried to operate under the radar for our own safety and to prevent further protective action by the unrepentant pastors. We only disclosed to a few trustworthy individuals that what we were attempting. Through these conversations, a group of people said, quote, if you start this, we will join you, whether it's with the police or a civil case, end quote. We did not try to recruit anyone, nor were we, quote, stirring things up, end quote. The rest of the story is in that article. So that is a slice of experience in the months and year following this upheaval at Valleybrook, and really just a very desperate attempt to keep things very status quo, it feels like.
It might be hard to talk about considering all the names that have to be redacted and stuff, but I mean, wasn't the purpose of the transitional leadership team, I understand that it involved people who were in the church already, but it wasn't kind of its purpose to be
like, how do we transition away?
Yeah, exactly. Why does it feel like same as the old boss?
Yes, that's exactly what it feels like. Were things really that good?
You know what this reminds me of is one when we were doing Lugan build, the father of the scholarship recipient who was trying to figure, and I think I described it as screaming up at the castle walls. Like, it's so much work to try and just drag accountability out of an institution that just won't give an inch. Yeah, that's rough.
It is. So next episode, we're going to start following what happened with Doug and Nate after all this happened, and
after they rode off into the sunset.
They rode off into the sunset, and of course, they absolutely did not start a church right away again. That's definitely not what you would do.
Well, when you have beliefs that firm, you can't help but spring a church up every place you step.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
Stay tuned. Chosen is presented by Cool and Unusual Punishment. Research and interviewing by Jody Haas, with editing and mixing by Tyler Haas. Our theme music for this series is by Zavely. You can find more music by him on Apple Music. Just search for Zavely, Xavly. This podcast is a proud member of the Nerd and Tie Network, a coalition of Wisconsin-produced shows that you can find at nerdandtie.com. You can also join the discussion in the forums at nerdandtie.social. You can reach us directly by sending us a message on our Facebook page or by emailing us at mail@coolandunusualpunishment.com. You can find links to all of these things and more in our show notes by visiting our website, coolandunusualpunishment.com.
Heed not their reaction, but note it for later.